All right, guys and girls, we are back. Thanks for listening to the AlwaysMoto Podcast, episode 58. That's right, 58 episodes of the AlwaysMoto Podcast. Thanks for you guys and girls out there for listening to us and supporting the show here at AlwaysMoto. And if you want to support the show and rock one of these badass t-shirts at the races, you just need to send us an email to info@alwaysmoto.com. No dots after that, just .com, and send us an email asking for a t-shirt, and we'll get back to you about ordering that through our PayPal, and we can get that sent out to you ASAP. They're $25 plus postage and handling. So now let's jump into this emergency department for East Rutherford and look at those guys coming back or going out that won't be there for this week's round in Nashville.
The emergency department. All the injuries, all the gory details, and when they'll be back on track. It's the list you really don't want to be on.
You do not want to be on this list ever if you can help it. But unfortunately, #injuries are a part of moto, and you will more than likely end up on this list at some point in your career if you are racing the Pro Series. Even if you're just riding a motorbike in the back paddock, you'll probably end up on this list at some point. Now, some things to note. This isn't our out from Rutherford. This isn't our in for Nashville. This is our just things to note. Let's go back to that Eli Tomac crash from practice there. Everybody was worried about knees. Last year, he hurt his knee last year. Did he just re-aggravate it? Guys, you really got to watch the footage. The guy gets up, limps off. He's holding his mid-thigh. He's not holding his knee. He walked off, basically. Yeah, he limped. It wasn't that bad. He bumped it, as if you watch the replay, he bumps his leg through the bars as he goes over. He's just got a cork thigh. Now we'll talk about those definitions in a second. But if you check my Twitter logs, you'll see I straight away, as soon as I saw that video, I said he'll be fine and he'll probably win. He didn't win, he got second. I was damn close. He also extended his points lead, so I'm going to take that as a win. He was fine. That was not an issue. He didn't twist his knee, nothing. It could have been much worse if he was going quicker, but he was going at such slower rate. I think that's what saved him in the end, basically. But let's talk about the fact that, what the hell's a Charlie horse? What's a cork thigh? What's a dead leg? What's a hematoma? They're all basically the same damn thing. But the Charlie horse has lost its definition, and that's where I think people got confused, because in Charlie horse in America, it has two definitions. It's a cork thigh, but it's also used for, in baseball terms, about cramping. Now, they're sort of similar because you can't exactly extend the leg or use the muscle the same. It will cramp or it'll restrict, but it's to do with a bruising and a swelling pocket that forms in that muscle from that impact or a hard impact into the muscle belly. So it's a cork thigh, it's a dead leg. They can stay, the thing with those injuries is, as long as you stay warm on the day, you're going to be fine. You can manage to move through it. If you stop for an extended period and try to ask it to warm back up, that can be where the problem kicks in. But for Eli Tomac, he would have known that. He would have had people around him there and then working on him to maintain that leg's ability to move and stay warm. And as you saw, by the time, even with that delay in the lightning side of things, he was fine in the main event. Nothing to worry about. And by the time he comes around for Nashville, he'll be fine as well. He might have been sore. The but that I was going to just say, the but is he might have been sore Monday or Tuesday post-race, but that would have been such short-lived. He probably just stretched a few things, warmed up, and he probably still did his normal routine for the week. That's how good it was. It wasn't an issue at all. Logan Leedsall, privateer on a Kawasaki. We've been in touch with him after a big injury that he's had just recently. He's unfortunately had a bit of a bike malfunction that's unfortunately all too common in our industry. Parts fail, unfortunately. It's how things work. They're not built to last forever. And it's caused him to have a concussion, and he's had some damage to his knee and to his thigh. Now, he's actually managed to injure his vastus lateralis and vastus medialis. Now, for those that don't know what the hell they are, those are muscles that make up your quadriceps. The vastus lateralis is the outside part of your quad muscle. The vastus medialis is that nice little bump you'll get right next to your knee when you've got a strong knee from a lot of cycling or a lot of end range extension. Those two, that one actually controls the kneecap positioning. But both of those are going to extend the leg, and he's having some major issues with that at the moment because he's severed the vastus lateralis and damaged the vastus medialis a lot. He still has the middle part, and he still has the I've just forgotten the bloody word. I'm just a terrible physio right now. But there's still 4 portions. That's why it's called the quadricep. There's still 2 other parts of the muscles of that quadricep groups to work that are working there. But he severely impacted the ability for it to function as it should. So he is currently waiting surgical options. We'll have to wait and see what that ends up being for him. But we'll have to just check back with him in a few weeks' time. He's unfortunately out for the foreseeable future for understandable reasons. We mentioned this on our YouTube video last time. Now, we do emergency department on the podcast, and it links over, and we have one on the YouTube. Now, usually the YouTube goes out the next day. So we usually record the podcast on a Thursday night, pretty late, as per this one. Oh, and we just had the phone fall off with the video camera feed. Good effort there, David. Good effort. Let's get that back and going. We've just had our sticky bit. So that'll be great for the YouTube footage. You'll see that disappear into the background. That'll be a fail, epic fail. Come on, someone will find that on the internet. But yeah, on the YouTube show, we sometimes throw in some extra information that we've had come through in that next 12 hours before we've got the YouTube video out. And this was one of them. Carter Stevenson, who we had on the podcast a few episodes back. He had a broken elbow, forearm issue going on that was keeping him out for quite some time. He's unfortunately riding his Harley on the road and managed to be run off the road by another car. He's broken the same damn area. He's had to have that all reworked. He's had plates removed and reinserted. He's hoping it will actually help him in the long run because it will have fixed some of the other issues that he was having. But we have to wait and see how that works out. He's hoping it'll only be sort of a 6 to 8 week recovery from this injury. He may then turn to want to get those plates out this time. We'll see how that works out for him. But at this stage, he looks like he's going to be missing the beginning of the outdoors. He's going to miss the end of Supercross. And look, it's just a bit of a shitty situation that it wasn't really his fault. And it wasn't even on a Supercross track. It was out on the road on a Harley. So rough go for Carter Stevenson. We might try and catch up with him again in the near future. Jeremy Martin, we talked about last week, was going to be fine for the race. Turns out he wasn't. As soon as I finished the podcast, I found out basically that he actually had collapsed a lung in that crash, which makes a lot of sense. He was short of breath and, had that chest region that was injured. Couldn't fly to East Rutherford. That was the only reason that he suggested that he wasn't able to race that weekend. Now, why can't you fly with a collapsed lung? Well, even if it's reinflated, why can't you do it within a week or so of that injury? You risk recollapsing it. The pressure changes that occur when you're in a plane, the reduced oxygen, the atmospheric pressure changes can all lead to increased respiration needs, which then also can put extra pressure and strain onto the lung and cause you to reburst that area of collapse that was punctured essentially and lead it to a further collapsed lung. And then you can further collapse the rest of the lung. Now the lung isn't just one big bag, it's smaller compartments, front and back and top and bottom and middle. And they can then, of course, that one section collapses, it can put strain on the others, and with that extra pressure in the flight, the whole lung can collapse on the one side, potentially even both in extreme circumstances. So it's really important that you don't fly within a week or two of a collapsed lung. Now, he's going to be right on that border for this next week's race in Nashville. Sounds like he's going to be coming back. Be interesting to see how that works out for him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he waits one more week, or if he even waits all the way through the rest of the season, just to be ready for the outdoors. But Jeremy's been having a reasonable season so far. Not great, he hasn't hit the podium yet, but I think that's on his bucket list for this season, so he might be wanting to try and get back for this round at Nashville. So he'll be on the border of that flight or not flight sort of thing. He'll probably be getting checked out by his doctor this week to make sure that he's A-OK to fly, and make sure he's good to be on track as well. Garrett Marchbanks, he's back on the bike, which is awesome. He's had that broken arm. He's had the plates removed. He's been slowly building back up to it. We see him, if you watch those Club MX vlogs, he's back on the Supercross track. We were hearing that he might be back for the last 2 rounds of Supercross, which would be awesome. So that would be the West Coast round at Denver and the East-West showdown at Salt Lake City, which would be a nice way for him to get a couple of gate drops before he heads into the outdoor season. So hopefully plan A still stays intact and you see him on the race, on the track for the last 2 rounds. Now, Mason Kerr, we're not 100% sure on the details. We reached out to Mason this week. He pulled out of the races at East Rutherford. He had some issues with a pain in the hand from a previous injury. We reached out to him. We haven't really got a descriptive response that we can put out to you guys. He may be on track this weekend. He may not be. I suspect that he will be, but we don't have that in concrete that we can present to you guys here really, really carefully. So I don't like to sort of claim this or that. I like to know my information direct. So that's why I'm saying I can't really say either way. But he had a hand issue from a previous injury, and that's as far as we know at this stage. We'll check back with him again tomorrow. So if by the time this YouTube video comes out, there might be some extra bits tacked onto the end for this one. You have to wait and see. Now, out from injuries. And this first one might not be an out as such, but let's see what happens this week. East Rutherford claimed a couple of riders. Obviously, there was the Eli Tomac crash in practice. There was also an Aaron Plessinger crash. Now, if you haven't seen his crash, it's only just sort of come up on a Motocross Action Instagram post recently. And he has a nice little over-the-bars experience and literally hip into the fourth jump. I think it was actually the next one in succession. Just slams his hip straight in it. Now he jumps up straight away and runs off and sits down on the tough block or just next to the tough block on the side of the track. So the hip initially was obviously painful, but he was also coughing up blood, and that's what's prevented him from racing the main event, we think. He's had the hip x-rayed on site, there was nothing wrong, but he did go for further checks, which was an awesome idea, and he's had an MRI done, and he's cleared his hip of any issues, which is great. He probably has a lot of bruising and swelling and just some general stiffness and soreness in that area. And it was his right hip, I think it was, if I'm looking at the video correctly. But the internal bleeding, something has caused that to happen. Whether he's done something in his lungs, whether he bit his tongue, not really sure. That wasn't really spoken about. But that would have been the reason for him keeping himself out of that. Unfortunately, it would have been a great race for him because it was a mud event. He loves the mud. But he was out for East Rutherford. Now, on his Instagram post this week, he's indicated that he's preparing himself to be back this week in Nashville, which would be awesome. But we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. There's been a few days since that's happened, and obviously a few days yet to the race day. Lots of things can happen and change in that time, so we'll see. He may be back, he may not be. We've spoken to Josh Varize of that AEO KTM team. He had a nasty concussion at East Rutherford. If anyone saw that coverage, when he got up and walked over to the mule, he was not looking 100% healthy at that stage. We've asked Josh, and yeah, he confirmed not great. He can't remember much about the weekend, unfortunately, and that's one of the signs of a significant concussion. He's indicated to us at this stage he's on the concussion protocol, but he is likely going to sit himself out. Now, obviously, he's racing West, so this week's an East race, but he's also going to potentially sit out Denver in the following week as well, just to give himself plenty of time to be recovered, which is a great idea given the level of his concussion. But he is on the protocol and he is following the guidelines as per the AMA set out, which is awesome to see that he's actually doing the right thing to try and recover appropriately. Now, making returns this week for Nashville, which was caused, that we've already sort of spoken about, was Jeremy Martin. Ideally, he's back on track. Adam Cianciarulo had a concussion, unfortunately. He came together in practice with Justin Barsha at East Rutherford, had a minor concussion. And look, I want to applaud Adam Cianciarulo for actually noting on his post when he's updating people about his injury that he was on concussion protocol. How hard was that, guys? He said it. We saw that he hit his head. We pretty much know that he's on protocol. Thank you, Adam, for actually saying to people that you are on the protocol and you are following those guidelines and you are taking the precautions to make sure that your health is up to scratch before you go racing. Ideally, his was a minor concussion. He'll be able to follow that AMA Return to Ride program, which is a 5-step program. He'll be back ready to go by next weekend, or this weekend, I should say, in Nashville. Henry Miller, we had him on the show last week. He had his career best finish the week before in Atlanta. Unfortunately, in the last corner, he manages to go down in the LCQ and miss the main event. And in that incident in that last corner, he's managed to hit the family jewels, or the nuts, the balls, whatever it is you want to call them. He hit that region. You blokes out there, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone's had it happen at least once in their life, and it's not pleasant. He was fine. He is fine. It's just at that moment in time, you know what it's like. it drops you. And he had to lay there for a few minutes to just get him back out of his throat, essentially. But I've checked in with Henry. He'll be fine, which is awesome. Now, that's our emergency department for this week. There was a fair bit happening last week with that East Rutherford round. Hopefully Nashville is a bit quieter on those sorts of things. We've got to get a few of these guys through the rest of these rounds to make sure that the outdoors isn't very scarce. Like we talked about in last week, we've had a pretty high injuries per round number this year, which when we did it last week was about 7.8. It's been high, and we need to make sure that a lot of these guys can get through the series without more of them disappearing before outdoors starts, because otherwise outdoors is going to look pretty scarce. All right, but that's the emergency department for this week. We'll have maybe potentially more updates on our Instagrams and social media pages through the last 3 days before the race day. So please check out those if you haven't already, and make sure you subscribe to those, the videos, the YouTube. Subscribe and like to it. Please do it right now. Subscribe and follow the feed for the podcast, and the same thing on the social pages. You'll be up to date with all things injuries in moto. All right, let's take a quick break here. We might actually just jump straight into Dave's diatribe, which is actually linked to Adam Cianciarulo. So let's hit the drop here and make sure we get the right one.
This is Dave's diatribe. What's a diatribe? A diatribe is a forceful and bitter attack against someone or something. So keep your head down. You might be next.
You could be next. We go after everybody and anything here sometimes. Other times it's pretty tame. This one's pretty tame, but it's something I really want to, I'm fairly passionate about, and I want to see more being done with this concussion protocol. When I check in with the guys after they've had concussions, and as much as there is an AMA protocol, and there's the impact test, and there's the 5-day return to ride program, or 5-stage, it works out to be 5 days for most people. It's hit and miss as to whether it's being implemented, monitored, recorded, whatever. What I want to see, whenever there's a concussion, one, I want an independent panel that's reviewing whether these guys need to go on protocol or not. But two, the main thing that I want to see this week that I thought is a really good idea, we have the AMA post-race penalty list that comes out. Such and such block pass, such and such. They're on probation for 6 months. Such and such cut the track. He's got a fine of $6,000. Whatever the fine or the penalty is, it's listed on this AMA list after each round. What I want to see is that list then starts incorporating the concussion protocol list. And it lists out, this guy is on, for this week, it was Adam Cianciarulo's on protocol this week. And he's required to provide an impact test by this date to return for Nashville. At least list the rider. And then at least you can say after that week, you can remove that rider and say, Adam Cianciarulo was cleared for return to riding at Nashville, and then he can be disappeared off that list. But I want to see a published list of those riders on the protocol so we can start to understand how many of them are actually being put onto the protocol, and if the protocol is actually being followed and utilized as it's intended to help the health and safety of these guys in their riding right now, and also their future health down the track, because that's where things are more of a problem that seems to be coming out from the research. So that's what I want to see this coming from this Dave's diatribe, is we see more visibility around who's on the concussion protocol. And I want the guys to do exactly like Adam Cianciarulo did and come out and say it when he's giving the update. Don't say, I banged my head. Tell people you're on concussion protocol. We're not idiots. We can work it out. Just be honest with the fans, please. That'll be all. Right, Dave's diatribe done. Let's just see more concussion protocol visibility. All right, let's take a break here on the AlwaysMoto Podcast, and we'll be back very shortly. Thanks for watching on the YouTube, by the way. That'll be the end of the emergency department segment on the YouTube channel. Let's take a break.